Right. So good afternoon. I'm Tracy Walker, the CEO of Journey Found, and it's my job to remind you that the meetings of the ARPA Transformational Advisory Committee are public meetings as defined under the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act and should follow those guidelines. And since this is a public meeting, this meeting will be recorded, and all participants are asked to please identify themselves each time that they speak. Members of the public may be viewing this, but they are not allowed to speak or participate in the meeting in any way, and the recording will be available on the DDS website. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes of April 18th.
So moved.
Barry, second. Wynn, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And we'll move into committee reports. Residential.
Let's see. We talked, last time we met, we talked about the frequently asked questions. We had done one for individuals and families, and we had done it for the providers. We went through all those questions. We've got a couple of those feedbacks. So we'll be finishing, I think we finished those off, and I know I have couple other things that have to go back to the families on the family and stuff. We then had committee updates. We had updates from Deloitte and from McDowell. And the committee also at that point, at this point, we've now will have rescheduled our committee to meet once a month. So our next one doesn't meet until May 25th. So that's the report for that.
This is Tracy Walker again. Thanks, Peter. Day.
All right, this is Keith Lavalette, DDS, reporting on the day side. Much like the residential side, we had the committee updates. On the communications side, they developed a flyer to send to individuals and families announcing the community forums that the commissioner are sponsoring in May. They're producing a transformation newsletter to be sent in June. And then we talked about the videos and how well some of them are coming along. We've seen some early productions of the videos, and some of them are quite good. On the Deloitte side, we have 15 transformation plans that we're working on. We've also have revised the templates, which are now on the website, which have been streamlined. And we'll talk about it further in this meeting, but we did talk about the approval process. And we also discussed the FAQ documents, but the day committee was all set with any issues with that. And that's it on the day program side.
Okay, this is Tracy Walker again. Thank you. Who is going to give the DDS engagement report?
I'll do that. We met, what was the last one? We met on the 19th. And we, well, there's been a lot of talk regarding our STEP program and the descriptions that we have. So we'll be talking more about that. McDowell will be. Talk to us about the videos. We had Deloitte come and discuss with us regarding the training sessions and the informational materials. And Deloitte will be talking about that today. And then we had Patricia Cimbala, who's our new assistive technology director, give an update in terms of assistive technology in its overview, and talked about the conference that's coming up in June 22nd, where we're doing that jointly with ADS, I think it is now. forget what it stands for now. Lost my head, but they run VRS as well. And so we're doing a joint conference for AT. We talked about the assistive technology RFP that's out there as well. And they're talking about working on how to communicate all this information. Department of Aging and Disability Services, thank you. And they're talking about how this is all going to be, how do we keep educating staff? It's that a lot of that stuff had to do with educational, the educational training material for staff. And that was it for my report.
This is Tracy Walker again. Thanks, Peter. Greg, are you going to give the individual and family engagement report?
Yes, this is Greg McMahon from DDS. It'll be pretty brief. We also had updates at our meeting from both McDowell and Deloitte, kind of keep us up to abreast of their activities, and spent the remainder of our meeting reviewing some more of the service description, one-pager fact sheets. And all of them are the 7 that are the primary focus are all through our committee now. That's self-determination, IHS, remote supports, CCH, employment, supportive housing, and assistive technology. So those are all been reviewed by the committee. And I won't steal the thunder from McDowell, but they are with them now to make them look good and under final formatting edits. And our next meeting then is going to be June 5th.
This is Tracy Walker again. Thanks, Greg. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions on any of the committee reports? All right, seeing none. Betsy, are you going to be presenting for Deloitte?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tracy. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right. So as Peter noted, there's a couple of things we want to update on today. I want to start with, you might remember previously we shared the list of transformational options with this group where DDS was considering what activities and items were going to support STEP. And so DDS selected which items they wish to focus on. And beyond that, DDS has assigned staff to own each activity, right? So that there is accountability and leadership within DDS really focusing on each item. We're going to work with these owners to develop an implementation plan that will include measures for DDS to use in the continued rollout of STEP and associated activities. So very exciting pieces happening there. We're in the midst of the informational sessions. Yesterday, there was a session for DDS staff in general. Tomorrow, there's one for case management and resource management. And then on Friday, there is the provider informational session. There was really positive feedback coming out of yesterday's for DDS staff. These are overviews of STEP, especially focused on some of the activities that are associated. You know, what is DDS doing? What are the incentives? How do they come together so that people can have a good understanding of the opportunities and their role within it? The reason case managers and resource management had a separate session from other DDS staff is because there is such a strong role for both of these groups in terms of, you know, case management will be developing additional individualized plans with people who are transitioning. They providers may speak with them as part of their plan development. And then case management and resource management are also 2 of the divisions that are actually reviewing the plans. And then resource management will be playing a role in helping sort of coordinate within DDS and then back to providers as, you know, people go through transformational change. Coming up next month, that we're going to have training sessions. There's going to be 3 for DDS staff and 3 for providers. For the DDS sessions, the plan is for the topics to focus on what's the next step. So, you know, what has happened so far in STEP, what's coming up next, what does the nitty gritty of how it moves forward look like? A training for people who are reviewing plans themselves. There was a training held for reviewers for phase 1. This is an updated one, additional information, and focused on the revised template, as well as lessons learned from the first phase. I don't want anyone to think there weren't trained reviewers in the first phase. They have been all trained. And then one on how to support provider creativity. Right, you've heard this message before of how, as part of STEP, DDS wants to make sure that providers feel more flexibility, have more options. And so a session for DDS staff so that that message can really be heard and understood across the organization. On the provider side, one on strategic planning and innovative approaches. This idea that, this isn't just a moment in time. This isn't just fill out a plan, receive some incentives, move on. But how do you look at and think through this funding, this opportunity, the additional resources and support for real long-term strategic planning to help organizations meet their goals based on what the individuals they support want and need. And then 2 separate sessions really focused on the granular pieces of creating a transition plan for day services and a transition plan for residential services. What are some of the kinds of transitions that are eligible for incentives? How do you begin the process? How do you complete the templates? What does that look like? And so those are the planned things. For the provider sessions, there will be providers presenting who participated in phase 1. So being able to hear directly from others who have gone through the process, we hope will be really valuable for folks as they move forward. So we're confirming provider presenters before we can solidify the times, but registration links will be coming out soon. Another new thing we wanted to flag for you all is that, as you're familiar with, the newsletter that comes out for STEP, which is focused on individuals and families, it's also sent to providers. Moving forward, there will be, alongside it, a provider newsletter supplement. This will just go to providers. It'll come out electronically. So when providers receive the individuals and families newsletter, they'll also get the supplement that has additional information and resources really targeted to them. So Peter is going to update on the plan approval process, that sort of letter and what that exactly looks like so that everyone's on the same page around expectations just needs to be confirmed. And then the first plans will be approved. There are some that are still in discussion back and forth with regions, but we're really excited to get those first approvals soon, the formal official ones. And then there have not been additional plans submitted as part of phase 2. That's expected. People are waiting for the information for the trainings before they roll forward, but we do hope to see some later this summer. Any questions?
This is
Looks like Wynn
Tracy
has a
Walker. It
question.
looks like Wynn has a question.
Yeah, thank you for the rundown. Just out of curiosity, how many approvals are necessary to go through this process?
1. So it's the approval comes from the review team as a whole. So there is
Okay, so that's one meeting.
one
that's
meeting.
about approval. Okay, because
So
it sounded like it was really long for a second there.
No. I'm glad you asked. It's not a long. Oh, sorry. This is Betsy Bella from Deloitte. Once a plan is submitted, multiple people at the region review it, so that you can get the viewpoint from case management, resource management, executive leadership, and then they come together on a consensus. If there are things that need to be revised or edited, there's meetings with the provider. It goes back and forth. Those things get updated. Once everyone agrees that they're comfortable with it, then there is one approval. And Peter's going to talk about sort of the formal aspect of what that looks like. And then that rolls forward. Now, given the flexibility and person-centered nature of this process, you might have a plan and you might plan for 10 people to transition and you kind of have in mind who those 10 people are. And one of them decides, actually, no, this isn't the right fit for me right now. Or maybe your timelines get shifted because people are having trouble finding jobs, whatever the case might be. And so there's also a process in place for that where people can send updates, but it doesn't slow their transformation. They just need to keep the update back and forth.
So this is Peter Mason. So the first phase is kind of taken longer than we had expected, but maybe not so much. One of the things that we have done is we call ourselves the gray team. We're trying to support the regions as much as possible. So that's Keith, myself, and Greg, and making sure that they know that there's people that can help them. And so what each region has done is that when a plan has come in, especially the initial one, they've come to with us and in the other two regions to go over that plan, and so that we all could be talking about it, so that we're trying to keep consistency among the regions and stuff. So we've done that for the first three. What we're finding is that a lot of plans are conditionally approved, and the reason why they're conditionally approved is they may have put in for both day and res, and the day may be approved, but the res isn't. And so because they're working through a couple of issues with that, so instead of giving two different approvals, they're trying to do one. So we're working through all those logistics to that. It's taken a little longer. And then we've also needed to come up with a standard approval letter, which I'm going to go over with everybody after McDowell's presentation. I'll go that so people can see what we're talking about. We're right now waiting for I think one of the regions is supposed to come back using that form so that we can make sure that we're all in agreement with that. What the region, rightly so, is a little, I want to say hesitant in terms of making sure they get it right. And so that we've got, once they know that the plan's approved, they just want to make sure that the amount of money that's going for the incentives is correct. So we've done a couple of rounds with that to make sure that we know what we're talking about. The provider knows what they're going to, what we're all agreeing to. So those are some of the things that we're working through. And we knew this first phase was going to be a lot of trial and error. It seems like I wish somebody had put their plan in a lot earlier so we could have gone through this, but they seem to all have come towards the middle of March-ish is when we started seeing those stuff. So
This is Tracy Walker again. I believe Cheryl Ellis has a question.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm just wondering, I believe I may have asked this question in another meeting, Betsy. But is diversity part of the review process, or is it even being addressed in the application process? And how are we looking at ensuring that a diverse population has been considered when we think about the applications? I guess I should.
This is Betsy Bella Deloitte. Thank you, Dr. Ellis. It is not part of the transition plan template. One of the pushes for phase 2 was to really sort of streamline and create simplicity. We were also hearing from providers in phase 1 that they didn't necessarily know who was going to be transitioning as part of the efforts, which makes it difficult to collect demographic information to ensure diversity. So unfortunately, that is not currently part of the transition plan and review process. However, I think there is an opportunity for it to be part of the sort of measurement review process on the back end, right? I think we can work with EDS to explore, as providers are reporting completed transitions, are we collecting some of that demographic information so we have an understanding of racial, ethnic, age, all of those sorts of pieces to see if there is an equitable division, and if not, how that might be addressed.
Thank you. And I forgot to say my name, Cheryl Ellis, Director of DEI.
This is Tracy Walker again. Any further questions for Betsy? Okay, doesn't look like there are, Betsy. Who is going to be reporting for McDowell?
Hi, Becca Brockway. I will be reporting for Maura today. Thank you. And I believe as I'm going along, we'll stop and Lauren is going to share her screen to share with you some of the stuff that have been created since we last met. The first
Yes, I'm here to help.
Thanks, Lauren. The first thing, the one pagers, as Peter, Keith, and Greg mentioned earlier, are almost finalized, and they are on the targeted supports, as mentioned by Keith earlier. We've also done a 2-pager. It's a 1-pager, a little longer, so a 2-pager on STEP, and that is for individuals and families, and that is currently up on the website in English and Spanish. That's completed. And there it is. And we are also working on one. It's almost finalized. Last step. Actually, I think it is finalized, and that could be up on the website as of today. A step 1-pager for DDS staff. So there's the individual and families, and then there's the one for the staff. And this one that Lauren is showing you is the individuals and families. And you can see it says how does STEP impact me, resources, phone numbers, where the person could learn more about STEP is there. There's a QR code. And if they do the QR code, they can go and look in this on the Spanish one if they prefer the Spanish one. The front page. Okay, and then this is one of the ones that is almost finalized, the other group of 7. And this is the individual's home support, and that will eventually shortly be up on the website as well. And again, it's basically the same format looking, QR code, where to find out more on individual home supports.
So,
What
Lauren,
it
can you
is.
just leave that up and let people be able to read that? So go back to the top just so they can see it, please. This is Peter Mason.
The pictures are from the video shoots that were done. They're the pictures that were taken there. And there's different pictures on each of the 7 supports, and also on the STEP page if you saw those pictures as well. These all came through with the help from the individual and family committee over the past couple of months, from feedback from them as also.
This
So
is
when
Peter
it's
Mason. The idea was to break this down into real simple, easy to understand language so that people could see what we're talking about.
And once it's all done, there will be one of these for supportive housing, individualized home supports, the assistive technology, CCH, customized employment, remote supports, and self-direction, which go along with the videos.
And Lauren, when we get some of these finalized, can we send this to the advisory committee so they can actually, take a look at it and read it and stuff?
Yes, as soon as they are all final, we're going to circulate them to the committees and post them on the website, which is ct.gov/step. Here.
Yes, this is Tracy Walker. It looks like Michael has a question.
Yes, Michael Beloff, parent and agency board member. Are these programs, are these flyers geared towards individuals who have funding and therefore want to see what they can do with their funding? Or are these geared towards families who are just looking for what their housing options are? Because obviously, if you don't have residential funding, all of these choices are kind of moot, because you can't get any of this unless you have the residential funding. So I'm just wondering who this is geared towards from that standpoint.
I don't know if we cater towards one or the other. I think we just made it that this is what we have. So if somebody has funding, they would be able to read this and say, oh, this is where I want to go. And if they don't have funding, they can then find out what all the different options are for DDS.
Because I just, from my standpoint as a parent, this all looks wonderful. We don't have funding. So what I really want to know is how I get funding. And if there's, I think there also needs to be a description for families who don't have funding, how and if and when they might be eligible for that. And if that could be added as well, that will probably keep a lot of angry people from saying, this is great, but what can I get? Because I have nothing right now. I think that would be that would be a helpful addition.
Greg, this is Peter Mason. Greg, could you address that with our committee?
In terms of the actual sheet, the informational profile, we had a good amount of conversation with families who, in terms of these specific documents, did not feel they're the place for process or getting into the complexities of DDS funding, because that could be a 3-page, 1-pager all by itself. So this was kind of just the basic, what is it? What are the benefits? What are the challenges? And was the goal of these. It may be that we should consider other 1-pagers on other elements, maybe like what the funding process is. But in terms of service descriptions, we felt like if we started getting into process and eligibility and many of the other factors that go with that, people would get lost in that and wouldn't actually know what the services were.
Michael Bell, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate that for these descriptions of services, we don't want to get too much into the weeds in terms of how you get the funding. But I think in a separate, there are lots of questions from families about how funding works, how the emergency system works, who gets funding, what happens. That is a key question for many families as they're looking for their long-term planning. And if we, in addition to these descriptions of the options when you have funding, how you get to the funding, I think would be very helpful.
Yeah, this is Greg McMahon from DDS. I think that can be very helpful. In this case, again, trying to keep it simple, we left it, if you read this and you want to know more, contact your case manager, and then we put helpline on as well, because some folks don't have case managers. So at least they could say, this sounds interesting, I'll make that call, and then they can begin to learn the system. But I do agree, I think simple materials about how things work, if we can make them simple, would be very helpful.
This is Tracy Walker again. Shannon, I see you, but first I want to find out, Cheryl Ellis, is your hand still up, left over from the last time, or did you have something else?
I just had a quick question. I think Lauren mentioned that the QR codes were to bring you to the Spanish document. And I noticed there were a couple on each page, and I wasn't sure if they all brought you to the Spanish version or each one had a different purpose.
Hi, this is Becca Brockway. I can answer that, Lauren. The QR code takes you to that web page that Lauren showed, and then you have your choice of looking at the Spanish version. The QR, it depends which one. For those, I should say, because prior when we did the QR code for the forum and also the QR code for the newsletter, those took you directly there. But I think with these, in the 1-pagers, they will all go to where Lauren's showing you now. And you can see step Spanish, step the other one, the English. And then below that, once the in-home support one, the 1-pager, it would be there as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
This is Tracy Walker again. Shannon?
This is Shannon Giacovino, DDS ombudsperson. I actually don't really have anything to add to Greg's explanation, so I meant to lower my hand. Thank you, Tracy.
All right. This
This
is Tracy
Lauren
Walker.
Gray from DDS. I just wanted to show you guys one more thing. We just wanted to show the video
Oh, yes.
example. Rebecca.
Hi, Becca. Becca Brockway, McDowell Communications. So the videos, currently 5 videos have been shot and they're in the production phase. The one that Lauren will show you, supportive housing, is almost finished, just a few more tweaks. And when you see the one that she will show, it's captioned in English, but we also will have all the videos captioned in Spanish as well. And then the last 2 videos to be produced are customized employment and self-direction. The self-direction filming schedule is almost finalized, so that will be the next one. And this is not completely finalized. They were going to do a little more with the sound and stuff, but Laura wanted to show it to you all today.
The program came about as an opportunity for us to have Kim in an independent environment, and that's something that we pretty much wanted for her.
We had built an apartment upstairs in our home, so she got the feel of what it's like to be responsible. So when this opportunity came, we're ready to grab it.
I like being safe in here with my roommate and my boyfriend, of course. I really like it very much. He's one of my favorite.
What does he like about you?
Well, he likes me the way I am.
The mission of the Connecticut Department of Developmental Services is to partner with individuals and their families to create meaningful opportunities for individuals to fully participate as valued members of their communities.
I think she really loves the independence. At first, I didn't know how independent she really could be, how she would grow in this environment.
The goal of supportive housing is to create an apartment community where people with and without intellectual disabilities can live in community together, where it feels natural for everybody that lives there. Individuals who move into these apartments quickly call their new apartment their home. And when their parents call them up and ask them if they want to come home to the family home, they quickly have different perceptions of what home is. And that's disappointing to the families, and yet at the same time, they're super encouraged that this is working.
We still have to be an active role in her life. So we're here often, taking her to doctor's appointments for it. Grocery shopping to make sure that she's buying the appropriate things. But besides that, we love coming and she loves having us, so I think.
So if a family wants to be there every day for the first 2 weeks or the first 2 months or the first 2 years, they can. We have some families that stop by every day. We have other families that do it for a couple of weeks and then they back off. We have some families that rarely come over because they value the independence that their adult children have and want.
I like living my own. I like my roommate. We do stuff together and, chores done. And we like living here. I am safe in here.
Challenge Kimberly, give her the right tools and challenge her, and give her the right support, and I know she can do it. I'm really proud of her.
One of the things that we see often is a parent's reaction that they're super pleased and surprised at how quickly somebody adapts to the new apartment. And at the same time, they're disappointed at how quickly they don't want to come back to the family home.
As parents too, sometimes you have to look at the best interests of the child. You have to let go. It's just, one of those things where daddy's little girl didn't want to see her go.
The Connecticut Department of Developmental Services offers a variety of support to help individuals live as independently as possible in places where they can use their personal strengths, talents, and passion. Visit our website to learn more.
This is Tracy Walker again. Thank you for sharing that. Other comments or reactions? Is there any more to your report?
Yes. So then the other thing that went out last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess, the first week of May, was a flyer for the May virtual informational forums, the day and night ones. And that is also on the website that Lauren showed earlier. That's up there in English and in Spanish. And the English version was sent to individuals, families, DDS staff, providers. I think it was a total of close to 24,000 that went out. And then the next newsletter is going out the first week of June. Included in that newsletter, there will be a letter from the commissioner discussing STEP, a section on providers that Deloitte helped with, important dates in June, July, and August of upcoming events, and a call for sign up for the e-updates so that eventually the newsletter will transition to electronically. And then also links to DDS's social media platform links. Lauren is showing you right now the May virtual informational forum flyer that went out. And again, pictures were used from the video shoots. And I think that is all, if there's any questions or anything.
This is Tracy Walker again. Barry?
So Barry Simon O'Kill. So a couple of things. One is, that video was really well done, and thank you for putting that together. And obviously the delay takes a little bit away from it, but looking forward to it getting out there. I know when I was at the Anchor conference, I saw a number of videos that were really, told such a wonderful story like that. And I don't know if as these roll out and in the future, if there's a way to consider, and two of the videos that just struck me while I was out at the conference was one about a gentleman who had pretty complex needs and had moved into his own trailer. The family bought a trailer at a trailer park, and that's what he wanted to move into. And then there was another independent living kind of one where somebody was in I'm not sure if it was a puffer wheelchair but he was definitely a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, where they told the story about how the agency had put together all of the shifts that needed for coverage. And they had some family who were on shift, some friends who were on shift, and some professionals who were on shift in order to provide that. And then the individual told this story about how he also wanted some time where he was alone in his house and he had nobody on shift because he just wanted to take a nap. And so it was really telling. But if you have those videos that show a continuum of complex needs, in a way, it also might help both families, guardians, individuals, providers, staff. But the other part of the story was that as staff were able to experience these new kinds of independent living situations, the staff themselves were happier, they were more engaged, there was less turnover, all of those kinds of things as well. So it's kind of this two-part story. But that, as we're developing videos, you may want to consider the continuum of needs in a way that allow for people to see themselves or see what they don't believe is possible in video.
This is Tracy Walker again. Thanks, Barry. Any other questions or comments? Anything else from McDowell?
No, I think we covered it all. Thanks.
Okay, this is Tracy Walker again. Peter, I believe you're back up.
Okay, Keith, can you bring up the letter?
Yeah, hold on one sec.
So as we were going through this, we wanted to make sure everybody understood what we were agreeing to and what the provider was agreeing to. And so this is just a sample of what we're looking on, but it goes through that. And so it goes through in about when you get a letter, you'll get the letter that it's the summary will tell you this is the day, how many moves per day, what kind of moves they're going to make, and tell you a number of people are transitioning. There'll be a time period in there for when the first person is scheduled to be placed and when the last person is scheduled to be placed. And then out of that will then come what the maximum incentives will be. And if there's a total agreed one-time amounts as well. In the background, we're working through the process in terms of authorizations. The one-times will be the regular one-time process, and that would be for if there's a movement of somebody from one congregate setting to a non-congregate setting, that would be done through a one-time. The authorizations we're looking at, so if somebody goes from a CLA to an IHS, they would then get an authorization for the regular hourly rate, and then they would get a second authorization for the enhancement amount. But the provider would only have to put that in on one place. And in the background, we would then be separating that out between our regular resort day account versus the ARPA step amount, so that we can keep those separated. So one of the things that we need to make sure is that, as you know, we put in an amended Appendix K, which has additional transition incentives. But we can't put those down yet because they're not approved. We had the public hearing in May, and that public hearing was very successful. We got a lot of good feedback from the legislators. And so we've now submitted this to CMS, and now CMS has up to 90 days to approve that. So we can only show what we have approved at this point. So once we do get approval from CMS, we will then have to issue a second one, which would include the additional incentives that would be included for the provider. One of the things we've also done with the budget, Excel budget page, is that we revamped that a little bit in order to allow for the approval of those additional incentives in the background. So we'll be able then to calculate that a lot simpler using the revised budget template that we have. You won't see that as a provider filling it out, but it is in the background because we've kept it in the background. Once we know that these are approved, we'll then be able to take them out of the background so you'd be able to see that. And then the other thing that is part of this is that we only have so much money. In the hope that we'll be very successful and every provider wants to put in a plan, there's a possibility, because we will be reserving the maximum total amount that somebody gets, that we may end up having to have some kind of a waiting list for those that submit plans later in the time period. And we'd have to make sure that we have enough money to pay for those programs that have gone through the approval process. And so we'll have this reserve that we're doing, and this will tell the provider what the maximum reserve is. Now, there's the caveat out here, because and I don't know why it says Mark in there, but it should be ex-ABC agency. So if we're looking at a provider and they're supposed to have placed 5 people by, I'll say December of this year, and they haven't placed anybody, then there has to be a conversation. Are you going to be able to approve? Are you going to be able to do this? And whether the region agrees with an extension or not, that will be a conversation. Knowing that there's other people out there, other providers that may be waiting for additional dollars. So we'll, on our end, we need to come up with a tracking mechanism that we're looking at all this and trying to figure out how to maximize the dollars and making sure that we spend as much of it as we can. So there may be times that due to maybe no fault of the provider, maybe an issue with something happened that their plan isn't going according to how they thought it was, that there may be a conversation where that reserve gets reduced. And then that would have to be a conversation with the provider. So that's put in there just so that there's no surprises. You know, if somebody's following their plan and doing what they said they were going to do, then their reserve wouldn't change. It's only when it starts happening that there isn't, and only if we also have so many providers that are put into this that in order for us, if we approved it, would be way over the amount that we have to spend. So I just wanted to make sure that brought that to your attention to see if there's any questions regarding that. And wanted to make sure that we're trying to be as open and transparent as possible.
This is Tracy Walker again. Any questions for Peter? Barry?
So Barry Simon, Oak Hill. So Peter, thank you. And for ABC agency located in Manchester, that's not Mark.
That's not Mark. Don't say that.
Have you thought about ways to use those incentives also for, I know, you know, we're going to fall into this category where the one times are not necessarily, that's not where our investment is, but it's in creating new programming that fills a void in the continuum of care options that could be created. And, you know, post the COVID kind of stuff, post strike stuff, you know, we have consolidated a lot of programming so that we have opportunity to either reuse, you know, facilities in different ways. That is possible, and things like that. So I don't know if there could be one-time payments that could be used through these dollars to start up new programming, as opposed to just, you know, moving people between programs.
And I think that's one of the things that we're looking at in terms of the creative piece. My expectation is it's going to be something that's not going to follow the CMS plan that we put in. And so we would then have to figure out what that would look like. I mean, obviously it would have to be, how does it fit within our current services? And if it doesn't, how do we do something differently? It could be for some an easy transition piece. For some, it could be a conversational piece as to, okay, here we are now. How do we get there, and what do we need to get there? It could be a demonstration piece that DDS wants to say, okay, you know, we agree with this. We'll do this in a demonstration, and we'll put aside X amount of dollars to see how this works. And whether that then would be state funded or not, we'd have to take a look at that. But unless we have those conversations, we don't know what's out there. And so so that's why we're trying to also say with this creative stuff, how did that work? I do know that for those agencies, there's a lot of agencies in a talk regarding a transitional house, which we're supportive of a transitional house. But a transitional house is still a congregate setting. And so that wouldn't that would not lead to incentives until somebody moves out of that transitional setting. And so people need to see that going from a CLA to a transitional house isn't transformational in terms of the process. So you're not getting incentives to move from a regular CLA to a transitional house. It's going to be when they move out of that from there. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't go along with that transitional house. And how do we set that up? Because that then it still fit within the CLA type of setting that would still work with that thing. Now, so I think that's where we're trying to see what is out there, where we don't want to close the door. And you know,
So
one of the things I was hoping for, hold on, let me just finish all I got in my head. One of the things I was hoping for with Deloitte when they were doing their analysis with the other state is they were going to find some of these creative programs, and there's not many out there, you know, so we may have to create these ourselves. And as you know, people like to stake within what they know. So, you know, trying to push this thing forward is going to be a big task. And that's why we're trying to make sure the regional directors understand what we're talking about, that the regular staff knows that we're talking about these creative things, because some of these things that may come in may fit within the incentive model and some may not, and then we need to figure out how to do it.
Yep.
Sorry, I needed to get that
That's
out.
okay. Yeah. So no, I appreciate it because it fits in line. So, you know, just as an example, so if we had an existing CLA and we want to create mini model apartments within that could be used for transitional housing and modeling, but still allow staff to be there, that and you know, I'll say me, we don't necessarily need the incentives, but getting some help to do the construction to create the transition of the program to create a different setting that could be used. So could you use one-time incentives to help transition a program from being one type of program to another type of program that could help move people along in the continuum? So just throwing that out there as ways to think about.
You know, we worked with Midstate, working through with DSS regarding a transitional house. And it was a 1.5-year process to get them to understand what we were talking about and get them to approve all this. What was the final straw that broke their backs, I should say, is that when you take a look at the money that DSS actually puts into it, and what DDS would save as people move out into their own, it became this big difference. And so for Midstate ARC, as they're moving people from CLAs into the transition house, they were either going to close the houses that they were coming from, which was then a savings for DSS. And then those individuals, when they did move into an IHS setting, then the amount of money that they needed was less than what they had for a CLA. And what we were hearing from from DSS was that this was going to cost them more money because the house to build at that point, they were building it from scratch, was going to cost more money than a regular CLA. And it wasn't until we showed other state officials that it was going to cost DSS probably another $50,000, but in the long run, it was going to save DDS $2 million. And when you show them that, it's like, okay, yes, it's going to be more for them, but the state itself could be saving this amount of money and could be using that money for people on the waiting list or people who need additional supports. So as you go through all this, that's the kind of thing that you need to see what this does how does it help individuals? And then how does it move people along the continuum? And then in the end, how does it then help the state in terms of using those extra dollars someplace else?
So for the ARPA dollars, DSS has to sign off on your use of those ARPA dollars to
No, but they
incentivize
wouldn't.
program
If you're
changes?
setting up a transitional house, we need to be working with them so that they understand that people will be into those houses, but eventually there'll be a turnover. And then it's going to be, okay, what's the backfill piece to this so that, you know, the room and board piece keeps getting, you guys keep getting the room and board, and where are those people coming from? That's the kind of stuff that we need to work with our other state partner in terms of that piece of it.
Well, I'm sure they're coming to the table to help.
It's interesting. There's a big change going on at DSS. There's a lot of
Yeah, I
changes
could
with the
imagine.
leadership, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's new people coming in who have a broader mindset. But they're also like salmon swimming uphill, up the stream.
Upstream.
And so they have a lot of people that they have to move with them. And if anybody's ever done organizational restructuring, that is not an easy process. And getting people to get out of their old way of doing things to the new takes a lot of time, patience. That's something right now I probably don't have a lot of.
This is Tracy Walker again. Are there any other questions for Peter?
So that was on this step. I got some other couple things. We have hired a fellow, a person on fellowship. It's one of the recruiting tools that the state is doing to hire people into public office or public positions. And so we hired Sarah. I can't get her last name. What's her last name, Keith?
Ulam Minnick.
And she's a Yale graduate that will be with DDS for a year. She actually is splitting her time between DDS and DAS. So we have her for 20 hours. And her role is going to be working with the leads of all our initiatives to make sure we have the outcomes and the data that shows that all these things that we've done have worked, or if they haven't worked, why they haven't worked. So she's been working with the leads. So we'll be starting to come up with what those metrics will be. How that applies to some of the providers is that the DDS money that has been given, we'll be looking at how that money was used. In particular, we'll be looking at like the employment enhancement, and we'd be looking at what providers are using that for and how successful it's been. And basically what we're hoping to get out of it is best practices that we would know, you know, the people who gave this kind of incentive for these individuals, it has shown that the staff stay longer and are more content. And if that's something then that the state can then look at is, can we replicate that more throughout the system? So like that's one thing we'd be looking at the infrastructure money and in terms of what people use that for and how that has enhanced their agency and individuals as well. And we'll be doing that through with all the different initiatives we have.
This is Tracy Walker again. Barry, you have a question?
That's a comment. Can't help myself. So just so I understand, Peter, are you going to be looking at our employee retention as a function of those dollars?
Yeah.
I
So
would
one of the things
suggest,
that we've also done, is we've incentivized the NCI survey. So if a provider fills that out, there's dollars for them filling that out. If that's the case, we then could use that data from there as a way of determining the metrics so that you're not doing something different. So we're trying to work with what we can.
how are you going to separate out the incredible coaching that the state has done from us by running a full-fledged commercial and phone calls to all of our staff, incentivizing them to come to the state from this initiative? There's no way to separate that.
We'll do our best.
Okay.
Alrighty then. This is Tracy Walker. Any other questions or comments for Peter? All right. Peter, was there anything else that you needed to report out?
Let's see, was there anything else? Nope. I think that's what I got.
Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the order from anyone else?
I just have one thing. This is Keith Lavalette, DDS. DDS now has the ability to either do Zoom meetings or team meetings. They actually gave me a Zoom license. So if Zoom is easier for people on this committee, I could switch this meeting to a Zoom meeting. So I just wanted to leave it up to the group to, since we now have choices. We can either continue on Teams or move to a Zoom meeting. Is there any opinions either way?
I say stay as we are rather than everybody having to deal with new links.
Yeah, this is Tracy Walker. I agree.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
This is Peter Mason. So our next meeting would be June 13th. Is that right?
No, this is Tracy Walker. It should be June 20th.
June 20th. Okay.
So
just wanted to make sure. June 20th.
All right. Anything else before we adjourn? All right. Motion to adjourn?
I'll
Barry?
move.
Second? Katie? All right. I assume all are in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.